To appreciate the challenges of sustainable food transport, we need to understand the fascinating history of food refrigeration, because these topics just don't go hand in hand, they are inseparable. To give an idea of the importance of refrigeration, I found this item from 2012. The Royal Society in London, perhaps the oldest scientific organization in the world, voted on the most important food inventions. Refrigeration won, beating out pasteurization, canning, fermentation, and even, yes, the knife. Why do you think it won? Think about that. Well, from my standpoint, here are the amazing benefits of refrigeration. Refrigeration prevents food loss by slowing the growth of bacteria, molds, and yeast. It overcomes the seasonality of foods. Refrigeration maintains the nutritional value of foods compared to other preservation techniques. It decreases the food cost by supporting regional specialization, and it reduces the time needed for meal preparation. So one way to think about the progress of refrigeration is to look at it from a cold chain infrastructure standpoint. Ever since the 1900s, when refrigeration was popularized, it has been continuously incorporated into every stage of the food supply chain, ensuring that food remains as fresh and as valuable as possible. This cold chain diagram lists the extensive number of actors who are needed to keep food cold from farm to fork. The process of developing a modern cold chain took nearly 200 years of scientific discovery and economic development, an effort that began in the 1800s. I've listed some of the key dates on this slide, which I will review in this lecture, which focuses on the 19th century. One could say that the beginning of the refrigeration culture took place at the inception of the ice trade in 1806. This is when Frederick Tudor ships ice from the state of Maine to the West Indies and the southern U.S. states. He sold ice as a luxury commodity, giving away free samples to bartenders with the promise that he would increase the sale of drinks. Taking advantage of empty cargo space, he also began to ship produce back to New England, keeping it cold on unsold ice. The picture on this slide shows slaves in Cuba unloading ice from Maine in 1832. By the mid-1800s, the ice trade had grown into big business, creating a cooling culture where households use ice to store dairy, fish, and meat. This picture shows the booming ice harvesting business in 1852, where ice was harvested from ponds and lakes in New England and in the Northeast. Notice how the ice is cut in a grid pattern, pulled into ice warehouses, and transported to trains destined for seaports. You can see the train in the back of the picture. And here's a picture of an ice warehouse from 1871. And here's a fascinating map from 1865 that shows ice traders shipping ice from New England and the Northeast to southern U.S., including New Orleans, Europe, the West Indies, South America, India, China, and even Australia. So we can say that in the mid-1800s, the ice trade was truly a global one. As ice was being shipped across the ocean as a luxury item, refrigerated rail cars had a more practical purpose. They were first introduced in the 1840s for the short-run transportation of dairy products. By 1867, J.B. Sutherland of Detroit, Michigan, patented the refrigerator car design with ice tanks on either end of the car and a ventilator flap in the floor of the car, which created a gravity draft that kept the cold air circulating through the car. Heading back to the ocean, we find that by 1881, the first commercially successful refrigerator ship took the first frozen load of meat from New Zealand to the United Kingdom. This ship used a refrigeration machine to keep its cargo cold. Despite a small number of commercial facilities that used machines for chilling food and manufacturing ice, the general public and most businesses relied on harvested ice until the end of the 19th century. At this point, it was still more advantageous to harvest ice than manufacture it in ice plants. To get ice into people's homes, the iceman would travel around the neighborhood and deliver blocks of ice, where it would be placed in a wooden ice box. The food would get placed in this part of the ice box. The ice would get put here. Notice that there are vents that allow the cool air to cross over to the other side where the food is. And this drawer down here is where the water, the melt water, would be collected. By the end of the 19th century, refrigerated rail cars also reigned supreme as the most popular way of transporting beer, meat, and other perishable items. As shown here, the Swift Company owned a fleet of refrigerated cars for their premium meat products. While refrigerated food transport and storage would continue to grow in popularity in the 20th century, new technologies and infrastructure would replace the harvested ice industry and make wooden ice boxes and ice delivery men quaint features of the past, and even the refrigerated rail car would be eclipsed by other modes of transport.